Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sun Moon Audiobook, the channel where we share wisdom and inspiring book journeys to help you grow and develop your best self, inside and out. Beneath the noise of our daily striving, beneath the endless hunger to prove we are enough, there lies a soft, wordless ache, the ache of separation. It's the quiet whisper that says, something is wrong with me. It lives in the background of our lives, shaping our choices, our fears, and even our hopes. And yet, it's the very doorway through which awakening begins. Tara Brach, psychologist, meditation teacher, and spiritual guide, has spent decades helping people walk through that doorway. Her voice carries both tenderness and wisdom, a deep understanding of human pain, and an even deeper faith in our capacity to heal. Radical acceptance is not just a concept to her. It is a way of life, a path back home to the love that never left us. She tells us that the suffering we feel is not because we are broken, but because we believe we are. The trance of unworthiness, that feeling of not being enough, is the great illusion of our age. We chase approval, achievement, perfection, hoping to earn belonging. But all the while, the heart waits for one simple thing: our own acceptance. Radical acceptance means seeing clearly and embracing completely what is here: our fear, our shame, our longing, our confusion, without judgment, without resistance. It is the courage to face our own humanity with love. And in doing so, we discover a freedom that was never truly lost. Tara often begins with the story. A woman, exhausted from years of self-rejection, finally whispers through tears, "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I love you." And in that moment, something softens. Not because her life is suddenly fixed, but because she has finally stopped abandoning herself. That is the essence of this practice. We spend much of our lives in what Tara calls the trance of unworthiness. It's that subtle but pervasive feeling that we're falling short as partners, as parents, as professionals, as spiritual seekers. We replay our mistakes, compare ourselves to others, and tell ourselves we should be different, better, more disciplined, more deserving. This trance becomes the lens through which we see everything: our relationships, our body, even our spiritual life. And because of it, we live cut off from the love that is always here. Tara invites us to wake up from that trance, to pause, to feel what is happening inside our body, to notice the contraction, the tightness, the shame. Instead of running from it or trying to fix it, we simply say, "This too belongs." It is not about making the pain go away. It's about allowing it to exist, tenderly held in awareness. She shares how even meditation can become another way to strive a project of self-improvement rather than self-acceptance. We sit on the cushion and try to quiet the mind, to be more spiritual, to reach enlightenment, all rooted in the same subtle belief that who we are right now is not enough. But the heart of true awakening is the opposite. It's the willingness to be fully here, as we are, without needing to be different. At the core of radical acceptance lies the practice of two wings: the wing of mindfulness and the wing of compassion. Mindfulness is seeing clearly what's true in this moment. Compassion is holding it with love. Together, they let us rest in the vastness of our own being. When we bring mindful attention to our pain and hold it with a loving heart, the trance begins to dissolve. There's a story Tara tells about a Buddhist teacher named Ajahn Chah. He would hold up a glass and say, "To me, this glass is already broken." He didn't mean it morbidly. He meant that when we accept the impermanence of things, that the glass will someday fall, that we too will someday fade, we can finally appreciate it fully now. Radical acceptance is that: to see the truth of change, loss, and imperfection, and to love anyway. Tara speaks of her own struggle with unworthiness. How, even as a teacher, she would feel like she wasn't doing enough, wasn't writing fast enough, healing deep enough, living awake enough. Until one day, a friend placed a hand on her arm and said, "You're trying so hard to be good." That simple sentence cracked something open. It revealed the tenderness beneath her, striving the very tenderness she had always offered to others but withheld from herself. And she began to whisper her own mantra, one she would return to again and again. This too belongs. We all carry that same longing to belong. To feel that our imperfect, messy human selves are welcome here. The tragedy is that we often search for belonging by abandoning the parts of us that most need love. We hide our anger, our fear, our shame, hoping that if we just act right, we'll finally be worthy. But what if the path to love isn't self-improvement, but self-acceptance? You, who are listening right now, have probably felt that ache too, the sense that no matter what you do, it's never quite enough. That's the trance. And awakening begins when you notice it, when you stop trying to fix yourself and begin to meet yourself. One of the simplest yet most profound practices Tara offers is called the pause. In the middle of any moment of pain or tension, we pause, we stop the rush to control or explain. We take a breath and ask gently, what's happening inside me right now? Then, can I be with this? This pause creates the space where healing begins. Because in that space, the heart opens. Mindfulness, Tara reminds us, is not a cold observation, but a warm, alive presence. It's the light of awareness that sees everything but judges nothing. It says, fear is here, anger is here, shame is here, and in naming what's here, we stop identifying with it. We become the awareness that holds it, rather than the story that defines it. Compassion is what transforms that awareness into love. It's the whisper that says, it's okay, sweetheart. It's what a loving mother would say to her child who has fallen, not scolding, not fixing, but simply holding. This is how we begin to heal the unloved parts of ourselves. I remember once in a moment of deep personal failure, sitting alone, and realizing how harshly I spoke to myself. I had failed to meet a promise I made, and my mind replayed the scene with relentless judgment. But then, almost by accident, I placed a hand on my chest and whispered, "It's okay." That small act shifted everything. The failure didn't vanish, but the isolation did. For the first time, I felt what Tara meant, that radical acceptance isn't a concept, but a return home. Throughout her teaching, Tara often returns to the image of the lotus, a flower that blooms out of the mud. Without the mud, there would be no lotus. Likewise, without our suffering, there would be no awakening. Our pain is not a sign of failure, but the very ground of transformation. When we meet it with awareness and love, it becomes the soil in which wisdom grows. As the book unfolds, Tara explores how this practice touches every part of life: relationships, work, the body, even spirituality itself. She shows how often we use others as mirrors for our own unworthiness. We blame, withdraw, or strive to please, hoping to find validation. But until we accept ourselves, no amount of external love can fill the void. Radical acceptance allows us to meet others as they are, without needing them to complete us. She also speaks about the body, how so many of us live estranged from it. We see our bodies as problems to fix, objects to control. But the body is not an enemy, it's a portal. When we bring mindful attention to the sensations in our body, to the ache in the chest, the tightening in the stomach, the warmth in the hands, we come back to the present moment. We come back to life itself. Perhaps the most radical act of all is to forgive ourselves, not as a moral gesture, but as an act of love. To forgive is to release the grip of the past, to stop carrying the burden of what we think we should have been. It's to recognize that, like everyone else, we were simply doing our best with the consciousness we had. And in that recognition, the heart opens again. There's a quiet mantra Tara often repeats: "Nothing is wrong with you." Let it sink in. Say it softly, as if speaking to a wounded child. Nothing is wrong with you. This is not denial, it's truth. Beneath your fears, your habits, your mistakes, there is an inherent goodness, an unshakable wholeness. When you remember that, everything changes. Radical acceptance doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean we stop growing or caring. It means that growth is no longer fueled by shame, but by love. It means we act not to prove our worth, but to express it. And so, the journey continues breath by breath, moment by moment, as we learn to hold ourselves and the world with open hearts. Radical acceptance, Tara reminds us, is not a single act but a lifelong practice, a way of living awake. It's learning to bring presence, compassion, and honesty into every corner of our experience. We start by pausing. We recognize what's here. We allow it to be. And then, as naturally as sunlight warming the ground, love begins to move through us again. She tells the story of a woman named Mara, a therapist who seemed to have everything together, respected at work, kind to her clients, well-liked by friends. But at night, she would lie awake feeling a deep emptiness. Her achievements didn't silence the voice inside that whispered, "You're still not enough." When she came to Tara's retreat, she confessed that even her meditation practice had become another way to strive for worthiness. Tara invited her to stop trying, to simply place a hand on her heart, feel the breath move in and out, and repeat softly, "I am enough." At first, the words felt false, even painful. But over time, the walls of resistance began to soften. Tears came, the tears of truth. Because in the stillness, she finally touched the part of herself that had always been waiting not for perfection, but for presence. Tara calls this coming home to the heart. And she reminds us, no one can do it for us. Every time we bring mindfulness and compassion to a moment of pain, we are reuniting with our own true nature, the awareness that holds everything. This awareness is not something we create, it's what we already are. The moment we stop running, it reveals itself. Still, our conditioning runs deep. We spent years judging, fixing, avoiding, controlling. We've believed that our worth depends on our success, our appearance, our approval from others. To wake up from that conditioning takes patience and tenderness. That's why radical acceptance isn't just a spiritual idea. It's an embodied practice. One of the most practical teachings Tara offers is a simple, powerful tool called RAIN, a 4-step process of mindfulness. It stands for recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. First, we recognize what's happening. We pause long enough to name it: fear, shame, anger, sadness. Naming brings awareness, and awareness brings space. Second, we allow the experience to be there. We don't push it away or try to fix it. We whisper, "Yes, this belongs." Allowing is the beginning of love. Third, we investigate not as an analyst, but as a friend. We bring curiosity to what we're feeling. We ask, what wants my attention right now? What am I believing? Where do I feel this in my body? The investigation is not about explaining, but about feeling. And finally, we nurture. We bring care to what we've found. We might place a hand on our heart, speak kind words, or simply imagine warmth surrounding the wounded part of us. This is where transformation happens, not through fixing, but through loving. Over time, RAIN becomes a sacred rhythm. It helps us meet life as it is, again and again. Tara says that after practicing RAIN, there is a natural resting, what she calls after the rain. The sky clears, the heart feels lighter, and we can sense the stillness that holds it all. She often tells the story of the Buddha's encounter with Mara, the demon of greed, fear, and doubt. When Mara appeared, the Buddha didn't fight him or flee. He said calmly, "I see you, Mara." And then he invited him to tea. This is the spirit of radical acceptance, not to push away what we fear, but to make tea with it. Because the moment we stop fighting, Mara loses his power. What we resist persists. What we embrace transforms. Tara invites us to look at how Mara shows up in our own lives in self-doubt, anxiety, anger, addiction, perfectionism. Instead of trying to banish these states, we can meet them with presence. We can say, "Hello, Mara. I see you," and then, "May I hold you with kindness." This simple act of naming and welcoming breaks the trance of unworthiness. We stop identifying as the struggle and begin to rest as the awareness behind it. You might notice this in your own life. The moment you stop judging your fear, it begins to soften. The moment you let sadness simply exist, it begins to reveal love. The moment you say yes to this moment fully, you are free. Not because the pain disappears, but because your heart is no longer divided against itself. Radical acceptance also transforms our relationships. So often we project our own self-judgment onto others. We expect them to fulfill the love we withhold from ourselves. We judge their flaws because we fear our own. Tara reminds us that true intimacy with friends, partners, or family begins with self-acceptance. Only when we hold ourselves with compassion can we hold another person that way. She shares a story of a father who came to her in despair. His teenage son was struggling with addiction, and every conversation ended in anger. Beneath his frustration, the father felt helpless and guilty, believing he had failed. Tara guided him to pause, breathe, and feel what was underneath the anger. He touched the sorrow in his chest, the ache of love for his son. When he met that ache with compassion, something shifted. The next time they spoke, instead of lecturing, he simply said, "I love you. I'm here." That moment of truth began to rebuild trust. It wasn't magic, but it was real. And that's the power of radical acceptance. It changes not just what we do, but how we are. In our culture, Tara says, we're trained to seek worth through doing, through busyness, productivity, self-improvement. We measure our days by what we accomplish. But radical acceptance invites a different rhythm, the rhythm of being. To sit quietly, to breathe, to listen to the sounds around us, to feel the aliveness of this moment. This is not wasted time. It is coming home. It is remembering that our value does not depend on what we produce, but on who we are when we stop striving. This teaching echoes through all great wisdom traditions. The mystic Rumi wrote, "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." That field, Tara explains, is the space of radical acceptance where we no longer divide ourselves into good and bad, success and failure, worthy and unworthy. In that field, we can finally rest. Halfway through the journey, Tara invites us into a moment of quiet reckoning, the emotional midpoint where many of us realize how much we've been at war with ourselves. Maybe you feel it too, that inner push and pull, the voice that says, "I should be over this by now." The truth is, you're not alone. Every human heart carries the same struggle. But there's hope in that shared vulnerability. There's beauty in it. Because it means that healing isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming real. So let's pause here, together. Take a deep breath. Feel your chest rise and fall. Imagine placing a gentle hand on your heart and whispering to yourself, "This belongs. I belong." That's all it takes to begin again, one honest breath of love. From this place, Tara leads us deeper into forgiveness, self-compassion, and awakening. But she doesn't offer them as lofty goals. She offers them as daily practices, available in each small moment. The moment you stop rushing, the moment you notice your breath, the moment you forgive yourself for forgetting. Forgiveness, she says, is one of the hardest and most necessary acts of radical acceptance. It's not about condoning harm or erasing accountability. It's about freeing your heart from the chains of resentment toward others and toward yourself. As long as we hold on to blame, we remain bound to the past. Forgiveness says, "I choose love over bitterness. I choose freedom over fear." It is a softening of the grip, a release into the present. Tara shares a story of a woman who lost her sister in a tragic accident caused by a drunk driver. For years, her grief hardened into rage. Then one night during a meditation retreat, she heard Tara say, "Forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past." The words broke her open. Through tears, she whispered, "I forgive you." It didn't erase the pain, but it set her free to live again. Radical acceptance teaches us that love is not a feeling we earn, it's what we are when we stop closing our hearts. When we forgive, when we allow, when we embrace, we return to that truth. And from that place, compassion flows naturally, not as an effort, but as our nature. As we move deeper into the heart of this teaching, Tara begins to speak about self-compassion, not as a sentimental gesture, but as a radical act of truth. She says that compassion begins the moment we stop running away from our pain and start listening to it. Most of us have spent our lives protecting ourselves from feeling. We distract, we numb, we work, we scroll, we talk endlessly, anything to avoid the raw, trembling aliveness inside us. But what we avoid most fiercely is often what holds the key to our freedom. Compassion asks us to turn toward that pain, softly, with curiosity rather than judgment. When we bring love to the places we've rejected, healing happens naturally, not because we fix anything, but because we finally stop abandoning ourselves. Tara often uses the phrase, "The only way out is through." That means we can't bypass our suffering. We have to walk through it with awareness and kindness. She tells the story of a man named David who came to one of her retreats. He was haunted by guilt years earlier. He had abandoned his best friend during a difficult time, and his friend later died by suicide. David carried that guilt like a stone. He meditated, prayed, did therapy, but he couldn't forgive himself. During the retreat, Tara invited him to imagine his friend sitting in front of him. "What does your friend want to say to you?" she asked gently. Through tears, David whispered, "He says, 'I love you. Let it go.'" And then, Tara said, "What does your heart want to say to him?" He answered, "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to stay." In that moment, something shifted. The wall between love and regret dissolved. What remained was tenderness, the kind that doesn't erase the past, but holds it. Tara explains that self-forgiveness doesn't come from excusing our mistakes, but from seeing them clearly and meeting them with compassion. When we stop resisting our own humanness, we rediscover our capacity to love again. Compassion, in its deepest form, means remembering our shared humanity. Every person you meet, every face in the crowd, every voice online carries invisible stories of fear, loss, and longing. When we remember that, the walls of judgment begin to fall. Tara reminds us, compassion is not weakness. It is the strength to stay open in the presence of suffering. This teaching becomes even more powerful when we apply it to our relationships. Often we think we love others, but what we actually love are our expectations of them. We cling to how they should be, speak, behave. Radical acceptance invites us to love people as they are, not as extensions of our needs. That doesn't mean tolerating harm or neglect. It means seeing clearly, holding both love and wisdom. It means saying, "I love you, and I will not lose myself in loving you." There's a story Tara shares of an older couple who came to her for counseling. They had been married for decades but were now bitter and distant. Each blamed the other for their unhappiness. Tara invited them to do a simple exercise, to look into each other's eyes and silently say, "I see you. I see your pain." At first, they resisted. It felt too vulnerable. But then, as they gazed into each other's faces, seeing the lines of time, the weariness, the longing, tears began to flow. In that moment, they weren't enemies or roles or failures. They were simply two human beings, aching to be seen and loved. That's what compassion does. It melts the illusion of separation. When we see the humanity in another, we awaken our own. Tara also speaks of compassion for the larger world, the suffering that stretches beyond our personal lives. The injustices, the violence, the inequality. Although she says that to stay awake in this world, we must learn to hold both sorrow and hope. Radical acceptance does not mean passive resignation. It means bearing witness with love. It means asking, how can I bring my presence, my care, to this moment? She tells of a monk who was asked how he could stay joyful while surrounded by so much suffering. He said, "I see suffering as the cry of the world, and my joy is the song of my response." That is compassion in action. It's not detached or naive. It's fierce and tender at once. Sometimes compassion means setting boundaries. Sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it means standing up for justice. But beneath it all, there is the same essence: love that refuses to close. And yet, Tara acknowledges this path is not easy. There are days when our wounds feel too deep, when our minds resist the softness of compassion. That's when she invites us to return to the body, to breathe, to feel the ground beneath us, to remember that love is not an idea. It is a living presence. She says, the heart that breaks open can contain the whole world. That means every time we allow ourselves to feel, we expand. Every time we open to what we once feared, our heart becomes more spacious. Eventually, we realize that the very pain we tried to escape was never separate from love. It was love calling us home. You, listening right now, maybe there's a part of you've been hiding from. A regret, a secret shame, an old grief that still hums beneath the surface. Tara would say, don't turn away. Place a hand on your heart. Whisper, I'm here. Stay. Just stay. The moment you stop running, healing begins. As Tara moves through these teachings, she also weaves in the wisdom of the body. The body is not just the vessel of the mind, it is the temple of awareness. When we inhabit it fully, when we feel the breath moving, the heartbeat pulsing, we return to the present. The body doesn't live in the past or future, it lives here. When we're grounded in it, the storms of the mind lose their power. She describes a meditation where we feel the breath like waves rising, falling, rising again. Each breath is a reminder that we are part of something vast and rhythmic. Even when the mind wanders, the breath continues, patient and forgiving, just like life itself. Tara encourages us to bring this embodied presence into daily living. Washing dishes, walking, speaking, even listening. She calls it mindfulness in motion. It's how we make spirituality real. Every moment becomes an opportunity to practice awareness and compassion. But she also reminds us not to make mindfulness another achievement. You don't have to be calm all the time. You don't have to meditate perfectly. Awareness is not about control, it's about intimacy. When you forget and remember again, that too is part of the dance. In her words, what would it be like if you could love yourself exactly as you are? Sit with that question. Let it echo. Radical acceptance, Tara says, doesn't mean we stop growing. It means growth no longer comes from fear. We no longer improve ourselves to earn love. We evolve because love is already here. That's the paradox of true healing. When we stop trying to change ourselves, transformation happens naturally. There's a quiet beauty in that, because it means every step, every breath, every imperfection is already part of the path. You don't need to be somewhere else. You don't need to become someone else. You are already enough. Let that be your mantra. In nothing is wrong with you. Say it again, softly, until it starts to feel true. Tara often says that the deepest longing of every human being is to belong not to a tribe, or a role, or an identity, but to life itself. Beneath all our striving, what we truly want is to feel at home, here, now, as we are. But belonging requires something terrifyingly simple: presence. We can't belong to life while we're rejecting any part of ourselves. So long as we keep trying to edit out our fear, shame, or grief, we remain strangers in our own home. She tells of a student who came to her filled with self-hatred. This woman had suffered trauma as a child, and her adult life was marked by anxiety and isolation. During a retreat, Tara guided her through the RAIN practice. She began with the recognition: I feel fear. I feel shame. She allowed it, trembled through it, and finally whispered, may I love this too. For the first time, she realized she didn't need to be free from her pain to be free in it. That insight that love can hold even what hurts most became the seed of her awakening. This is the heart of radical acceptance. We stop postponing our belonging. We stop saying, "I'll love myself when," and instead begin to love ourselves now. Not because everything is okay, but because love is the only thing that can make it so. Tara shares a profound teaching. When we accept ourselves just as we are, we open to the boundless love that is our true nature. That love doesn't erase pain. It surrounds it with tenderness. It doesn't deny imperfection. It blesses it. It doesn't make us less human. It reveals that our humanity was sacred all along. She often uses the image of the sky, vast, open, unchanging. Our thoughts and emotions are like clouds moving across it. Sometimes they're dark, heavy with rain. Sometimes they're light, full of sunlight. But the sky remains untouched. Awareness is that sky. When we remember we are the sky, not the clouds, we stop being trapped by the weather of our minds. In one of the book's most luminous passages, Tara speaks about the sacred pause. It's the moment between stimulus and response, between fear and reaction, between thought and choice. In that pause, awareness breathes. When we pause, we remember who we are. It's what allows a mother to respond with patience instead of anger, a leader to speak with clarity instead of pride, a friend to listen instead of fixing. The sacred pause is where love enters. She also reminds us that radical acceptance doesn't mean we abandon discernment. It doesn't mean saying yes to harmful behavior or injustice. It means seeing clearly without hatred. It means holding the full picture, the truth of suffering, and the possibility of transformation. That's why compassion is not passive. It's courageous. It allows us to face pain without closing our hearts. Tara calls this the fierce heart, a heart that can hold grief and gratitude at once, that can look at suffering and still choose love. She shares a story from her own life. Years ago, she was diagnosed with a chronic illness that left her body weak and her mind anxious. She felt betrayed by her own body, ashamed of its limits. Meditation helped, but only to a point. The breakthrough came one night when she sat in the dark, exhausted, and whispered, "This too belongs." Something softened. The war was over. From that surrender, a deeper peace emerged, not the peace of escape, but the peace of coming home. That moment captures the paradox at the heart of this teaching. Only when we stop rejecting life do we discover the freedom we've been seeking all along. At this point in her journey, Tara turns her attention to awakening not as an abstract goal, but as the natural unfolding of awareness. Awakening, she says, is remembering our true nature, open, compassionate, interconnected. It's the shift from identifying as a self struggling to survive, to realizing we are the vast awareness that holds all selves. She illustrates this with a metaphor of the ocean and its waves. Each of us is a wave, unique and beautiful, but the wave forgets that it's made of the ocean. It begins to fear other waves, to compete, to cling. The practice of radical acceptance is the remembering, I am the ocean too. When we awaken to that truth, fear loses its hold. We still live as waves with names, stories, lives, but we do so with the humility and grace of knowing we belong to something infinite. In that awakening, love becomes effortless, not a sentiment, not an obligation, but the natural expression of who we are. Tara calls this loving presence. It's the awareness that sees through the eyes of the heart. When you meet the world from that space, everything becomes sacred, the laughter, the silence, even the pain. But awakening, it's a one-time event. It's a continual remembering and forgetting, a rhythm like breathing. We fall asleep to our wholeness, then wake up again. And each time, the heart grows a little more tender, a little more vast. You, listening now, maybe you've had glimpses of that presence before. A quiet moment watching the sunrise, the sound of rain on your window, a stranger's kindness that made you tear up. In those moments, the veil of striving falls away, and you remember, this is what I am. This is home. Tara encourages us to cultivate those moments not by chasing them, but by paying attention. Awareness is always one breath away. The more we turn toward it, the more it reveals itself. She says, the boundary between self and world dissolves when we rest in awareness. When we realize that the trees, the people, the stars, all are expressions of the same life, compassion becomes as natural as breathing. And yet, even in awakening, the human experience continues. We still feel grief, anger, loss, but we hold them differently, not as proof of failure, but as waves in the great ocean of being. At the core of it all, radical acceptance is love meeting reality. It's the willingness to be intimate with life, no matter how it appears. It's the quiet courage to whisper, yes, even when the heart aches. Tara says, when we open to what is, we discover that love was never gone, only obscured. The practice, then, is not to find love, but to remove the walls that hide it. And those walls fall each time you pause, each time you forgive, each time you meet yourself with kindness. That's how we awaken, not through effort, but through tenderness. As the book moves toward its close, Tara brings us into the realm of daily practice. She reminds us that enlightenment is separate from ordinary life. It's in washing the dishes, driving to work, listening to a friend. Every moment is a chance to practice presence. She offers simple ways to integrate radical acceptance into our days. When you wake in the morning, pause and take one mindful breath. Feel the life moving through you. Whisper, thank you. When you notice judgment toward yourself or another, pause again. Say, this too belongs. When pain arises, place a hand on your heart. Ask, can I hold this with kindness? When joy appears, let it in fully. Let it remind you of your natural state. These small moments weave mindfulness and compassion into the fabric of your life. Over time, they become your way of being. The more you practice, the more you see that awakening is not somewhere you arrive. It's something you remember again and again in the midst of living. And slowly, the walls begin to crumble. The trance of unworthiness fades. The heart remembers its vastness. You begin to sense that even your pain, your confusion, your fear were never obstacles, but teachers. In the end, Tara leaves us with a simple truth. We are not trying to become worthy of love. We are learning to remember that we already are love. In the final movement of Tara's teaching, everything returns to its simplest form: presence and love. She says that awakening is not a grand revelation, it's a homecoming. It's remembering that you were never separate from the life you've been seeking. You are already part of the great river of being, flowing, changing, infinite, and radical acceptance is how you remember the current. Tara reminds us that this path is not linear. Some days, the heart feels open and luminous. Other days, the trance of unworthiness returns, the inner critic, the old story that says, you're not enough. On those days, she invites us to practice beginning again, not with frustration, but with tenderness. Each time you notice you've fallen back into the trance, that noticing is awakening. You've already stepped out of it. She often compares this to training a puppy. When the puppy wanders off, you don't yell. You simply call it back gently, again and again. Come back, sweetheart. That's the tone she invites us to take with ourselves. Soft, patient, loving. The path is not about staying awake all the time. It's about returning when we forget and loving ourselves each time we do. Radical acceptance also means embracing the impermanence of life. Everything we love, every person, every experience will change and pass. Most of our suffering comes from resisting that truth. But when we open to impermanence, something beautiful happens. Gratitude arises. Each breath, each moment becomes precious because we know it will not last. When we stop clinging, we start truly living. Tara tells the story of an elderly woman in hospice who spent her last days in radiant peace. When asked how she could be so calm, she said, "I stopped fighting with life. I let it be what it is." That is the essence of radical acceptance. It's not about changing what happens, but about changing our relationship to what happens. It's about saying yes to life, all of it, and in that yes, finding freedom. You may notice, as you listen now, that a part of you softens a quiet recognition that what you've been searching for was never outside you. The peace you long for is already within you, waiting for your permission to be felt. Tara closes the book by returning to the simplest practices: mindfulness, compassion, and love. She encourages us to pause throughout the day and ask two questions. What is happening inside me right now? Can I meet this with kindness? These questions are the heartbeat of radical acceptance. They anchor us in the truth that no matter what is unfolding, joy or sorrow, ease or struggle, awareness and love are always available. She also invites us to reflect on our deepest intention. What is it that your heart truly longs for? Not what your mind demands: success, approval, certainty, but what your soul hungers for. Most of us, she says, discover the same answer: to love and be loved, to feel whole, to live awake. That intention becomes the compass of our spiritual path. When you live from that place, from the quiet, knowing that you are enough, that nothing needs to be fixed for you to be whole, your life becomes an expression of awakening. You begin to act not from fear, but from love. You begin to speak from authenticity rather than defense. You begin to move through the world as a presence of peace. And yet, Tara does not promise that life becomes free of pain. She promises something deeper: that you can meet pain without losing love. That you can walk through loss and still feel gratitude. That even when your heart breaks, it breaks open. In the final pages, she shares a story from a meditation teacher named Stephen Levine. A man dying of cancer said to him, "If I had my life to live over again, I'd let myself be happier." Tara reflects that we often postpone joy, waiting for the perfect moment. But radical acceptance means saying yes to joy now, even in the midst of uncertainty. To dance while we can. To love without waiting. She offers another mantra. This moment is it. Not the next one. Not the one after you finish healing or succeeding or understanding. This moment, messy, imperfect, alive, is the heart of your life. When you surrender to it, you discover the quiet miracle of being. You who are listening now, feel that for a moment. This moment, right here. The air around you, the beating of your heart, the stillness behind the words. This is it. This is the only place where love exists. Tara says that radical acceptance is like the sunrise. It doesn't erase the night. It transforms how we see it. The shadows are still there, but they are now part of something vast and luminous. In the same way, when we accept ourselves fully, our wounds become part of our beauty. Our flaws become the cracks through which light enters. The practice, then, is simple. Come home to yourself, again and again. When you fall into self-judgment, whisper, "This too belongs." When you feel lost, place a hand on your heart and remember, nothing is wrong with me. When you meet another in pain, see their innocence beneath the armor. Let every encounter be an opportunity to love. Because in the end, radical acceptance is not about self-improvement. It's about self-liberation. It's the freedom that comes when you realize that nothing needs to be added or removed, that you are already whole, already worthy, already enough. And from that realization, compassion flows outward to your family, your community, the earth. As your heart opens, so does the world. Tara often ends her talks with a blessing. It's simple, but it carries the essence of everything she's taught. May you be free from the trance of unworthiness. May you trust the goodness of your heart. May you rest in the love that is your true nature. Let those words wash over you. Let them become your own. And as this journey closes, take a final, gentle breath. Feel it enter your body, your heart, your awareness. Let it remind you, you are alive, you are enough, and you belong here. So go live with presence. Love without condition. Forgive yourself daily. Pause often. And when life feels heavy, remember the mantra that carried you through this entire story. This too belongs. Because it does. All of it. Every moment, every tear, every joy. All of it belongs. And from that belonging, a new kind of freedom begins. The kind that cannot be lost. If this story has touched you, if it has softened even one corner of your heart, let it ripple outward. Share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment with your reflection. Like, share, subscribe not for numbers, but for connection. For spreading the simple truth that love is already here, waiting for us to remember. Because every time one of us wakes up to that truth, the whole world becomes a little more kind. And that, perhaps, is the truest form of awakening.